Hello, and welcome to this introductory course on Francis and Clare of Assisi. This summer course in Franciscan Studies is organized by the Center for Catholic Studies at Durham University, and I'm delighted to be invited to present this course for you. My name is Br Bill Short. I'm originally from Seattle, Washington, and a member of the Friars Minor of the province of St. Barbara in California. I'm speaking to you from these beautiful surroundings at St. Isidore's College, the Irish Franciscan College in Rome. This is where I also work on the editing of early Franciscan texts. It's a delight to be with you, and in this presentation, I would like to introduce you to the figures of Francis and Clare, to the texts about them, and to the topics we will be covering in this course. For those of you who are not familiar at all with the figures of Francis and Clare of Assisi, they were both born in the late 12th century, so the late 1100s. Francis died in 1226, Clare in 1253. They founded a new form of Christian community life in the church of their day, despite a lot of questions about that from church authorities. That form of life based on the gospel may seem very common to us today, but it seemed unusual to people of their lifetime. We're going to be exploring what was the traditional form of Christian community life when they were growing up, and the innovation that they introduce into our understanding of how a group of Christian disciples can be organized according to the pattern of Jesus and his disciples. Just a word about the century in which they lived. The 13th century was marked by violence, the violence of the Crusades, as Christian and Muslim fought against each other in what is now Palestine and the state of Israel, in Egypt and Syria. It was in this context of conflict that Francis and Clare also experienced a kind of civil war in their own town in the first decade of the 13th century. Francis himself fought in a war against the neighboring city, Perugia, just across the Tiber River from Assisi, and he was captured, held as a prisoner of war for nearly a year before being released back to his family. Clare and her family had taken refuge during the Civil War with members of the nobility in the town of Perugia. So the two families were actually on opposite sides during that conflict. This already gives us a notion that Francis and Clare would not have grown up together in the same social class. Clare, a member of the nobility, and Francis, a member of the new merchant class, would have very little in common. It's remarkable then that in the early part of the 1210s, Francis himself finds himself at the center of a growing community, followers who wish to live as he lives, an experience of conversion following his imprisonment. He came to embrace the lepers of the hospice for lepers below the town of Assisi. He began working on the repair of churches, like the little church of San Damiano, which will later be a home for Clare and a community of women. As Francis develops in his own vocation, he attracts the attention of Clare, and there are meetings between the two arranged in which Clare finally decides that she will leave her family home without permission on the night of Palm Sunday in the year 1212. By that time, Francis and his small group of brothers, perhaps no more than a dozen or so, were already working at the leper hospice below the town and on the repair of the little church called St. Mary of the Angels of the Portiuncula. It was there on the night of Palm Sunday that Clare gave up family, and home to join this new experiment in living according to the form of the gospel. During the years of their lifetime, their two communities grew, although they did experience misunderstanding, sometimes opposition. But at the time of their death, both communities had become important figures in the religious landscape of Western Europe. A group of men and women, lay and married, those who were living in their own homes, singly or in groups, also decided to embrace a life of penance, inspired by the example of Francis and his followers. These groups of penitents were already common in the Middle Ages, but this particular group, probably originally in Assisi, began to see something in the vision of a gospel life proposed by Francis that began another community oriented toward the same vision, the Franciscan brothers and sisters of penance. All of those groups still exist to our own day with different names: Friars, Br Clares, Third Order or secular Franciscans, religious of the Third Order. And together, these constitute the largest group in the church inspired by a single founding charism. We're going to be exploring some of the beginnings of that movement, its founders, and its texts in the coming days. I'd like to call your attention to an important resource that we will be using. It's entitled Francis of Assisi Early Documents. This is the first volume of 3, entitled The Saint. There's a corresponding volume entitled Clare of Assisi Early Documents. Here you will find the writings of Francis and Clare in a readable English translation. I was privileged to be one of the people working on this book. And it's also available for those of you who don't have access to these books in your library on a website hosted by the Commission on the Franciscan Intellectual Tradition at franciscantradition.org. This information will be in a brief PowerPoint that you will be able to view at the end of this presentation. We will be using these resources to learn more about the founding documents of the Franciscan movement. These are available freely on the website, though you will need to register for your free account. I'm a member of the committee that organized it. I guarantee we don't give your address or password to anyone, and we never ask you for money. During these coming days, I am hoping that you will enjoy learning more about Francis and Clare, that you will be introduced to the writings that explain their lives and their vision for us today, and you'll begin to see what I believe Pope Francis has seen in the Franciscan vision, a hopeful sign for the poor, for peace, for the protection of our common home in creation at the dawn of the 21st century. Enjoy the coming days learning about these two great pioneers and the family they established in the church. God bless you and enjoy the course. Thank you. Welcome to our online course, Introducing Francis and Clare of Assisi. I'm Br William Short. I will be your instructor in the course. This course is offered through the support of the Center for Catholic Studies at Durham University. Some basic dates and names associated with Francis of Assisi will help us to get oriented to our topic. Francis, as we call him in English, had a name in Italian, Francesco, a nickname actually, for Giovanni. He was the son of Pietro di Bernardone and his wife Pica. He was born in 1181 or 2 in Assisi, Umbria, which is in north central Italy. His family buys and sells fabrics, cloth, some quite expensive. They were part of the new merchant class of the town of Assisi. He was educated at the local church. He had a basic reading and writing knowledge of the Latin language, although he spoke a dialect of Italian called Umbro, but it was not yet written down. He had a brief military career, including a defeat in which he was taken as a prisoner of war. This experience was followed by a deep experience of conversion in his early 20s. He repaired churches, served lepers, and soon attracted followers. In fact, thousands of followers, both lay and religious men and women, will look back to him as the founder of their communities. He died in Assisi during the night of October 3rd, 1226. He was just 44 years old. Within 2 years after his death, he was canonized as a saint by Pope Gregory IX, who had known him personally. Clare, in Italian Chiara, was the daughter of Favarone di Offreduccio and his wife, Lady Ortolana. Younger than Francis, she was born in 1194 to a family of the noble class. She refused offers of arranged marriages and dedicated herself instead to a life of penance while still living in her family home. She joins Francis and his brothers on the night of Palm Sunday in the year 1212, and for the rest of her life will stay at the Church of San Damiano, which Francis had repaired. She attracts many women to her way of life, initially in Assisi, then in the surrounding areas of Italy and beyond. She composes the first religious rule written for women by a woman. She died in Assisi in 1253 and was 59 years old. She was canonized as a saint by Pope Alexander IV in 1255. These two friends pioneered what we might call a new way of being Christian. They take as their model the words and deeds of Jesus in the Gospels, and each creates a form of community life based on their reading of the Gospel called evangelical life, or in Latin, vita evangelica. This was different from the common model in the church at the time, which was based on the model of the Acts of the Apostles, chapter 2. This was called the life of the apostles, or the apostolic life, vita apostolica. Both Francis and Clare experienced delays and opposition while seeking official approval for their innovative way of life. 14 years of waiting for Francis and 40 years for Clare. But thanks to their persistence, their vision grew and spread, and today the Franciscan way of life is one of the most widespread in the church, among religious and laity. When we speak about the communities that were inspired by the gospel vision of Francis and Clare, we're speaking about the three orders of the Franciscan family: the Lesser Brothers, or Friars Minor, a group of men living in community with religious vows, including both active and contemplative elements; the Poor Sisters, today more commonly called Poor Clares, women living in community with religious vows, primarily in a contemplative form of life; and Brothers and Sisters of Penance, or secular Franciscan order, or third order religious. These can be secular or lay Franciscans, men and women, single or married, formed in local groups called fraternities, which can be both active and contemplative. Third order religious are men and women with religious vows who live according to the way of life of the Brothers and Sisters of Penance. In this picture, we see the general ministers of the various communities of friars with Pope Francis. From left to right, the general minister of the Friars Minor, the initials OFM indicate their branch; Friars of the Third Order Regular, or TOR. In the center of the picture, of course, Pope Francis. And to his right, the general minister of the Friars Minor Conventual, with their initials OFM Conv, and the minister of the Friars Minor Capuchin, with their initials OFM Cap. All can claim to descend from the founding charism of Francis and the early group of his brothers in Assisi. The Poor Sisters, or Poor Clares, are organized in autonomous monasteries. There are many such monasteries belonging to different forms of the Poor Clare charism throughout the world. Here we have a picture from the community of sisters in the oldest community, that originally founded by St. Clare at San Damiano, and now located at the proto-monastery of St. Clare in Assisi, where they have lived since the time of the death of St. Clare in 1253. The secular Franciscan order, with its initials OFS, here shown with members of their general chapter, come from many different walks of life. Lay men and women, married and single, organized in fraternities, belonging to an international order whose representatives from many different countries can be seen in this picture. During the course, you may want to learn more, to explore some of the supplementary readings and other resources. I would like to show you now some Franciscan resources that are available, both those in print and those in online form. And I'm very happy to share with you a picture of our very old-fashioned library here at St. Isidore's College, where I live in Rome, a great library from the 1600s. Francis of Assisi, Early Documents, the Saint. This contains all the most important documents that we will be studying in this class. Published by New City Press, New York in 1999, it contains the complete writings of Francis of Assisi in an English translation. It also includes the earliest life of St. Francis by Thomas of Celano, written in 1228 for the saint's canonization. But it also includes many other early lives of the saint, papal documents concerning the three Franciscan orders, and other important information. There's a similar document collection entitled Clare of Assisi, Early Documents, The Lady. Already in its third edition, it also is published by New City Press in New York, most recently in 2006. It contains the complete writings of Clare of Assisi in English translation, and the legend or life of St. Clare, also, we believe, by Thomas of Celano, written in 1254. There are also other early lives of St. Clare and papal documents that concern the order of the Poor Sisters or Poor Clares. All of these resources are also available online through the Commission on the Franciscan Intellectual Tradition, or CFIT. Here we have the full online texts of Francis of Assisi early documents that I just mentioned, and Clare of Assisi early documents as well. Here they're available not only in the English translation, but also in the Latin original. On this website, you can find these sources in formats that you can use on your computer, and also in a format that you can use on mobile devices. As you will see, you can also find many other resources available on this website. The website address is www.franciscantradition, all one word, .org, O-R-G. The online texts of Francis and Clare are the two volumes that I've indicated earlier. This website is operated by the Commission on the Franciscan Intellectual Tradition, which is a secretariat of the English-speaking Conference of the Order of Friars Minor. And I'm pleased to be a member of the commission myself. You do need to register with a username and password, but there is no fee in order to use the Franciscan sources that are available there. After you register, just look for the tab that says Early Sources. Click on the tab and choose the sources you wish to read. I hope that this brief introduction to the figures of Francis and Clare and resources about them will help you to get off to a good start with our course. Thank you.